So this study is about competition and conflict and how they're linked and what this means for conflict resolution. And so the factors the study looked at what are the factors and situations that might create competition and or conflicts, and then looked at what we can learn from this. And this is more of a literature review rather than a study. So the methods for this is they'll just do existing research focused on competition and conflict, specifically focusing on a number of things, including conceptualizations of conflict, conflict in dyadic decision settings like abstractive perceptions and individual preferences, conflict in group decision settings, evaluating empirical evidence, theoretical perspectives, and cognitive processes, and then conflict of individuals within their groups, as well as coalitions. And so in each category, the authors reviewed the research as it pertained to this topic, as well as social theories and models, a representative formula to better understand the factors, why conflict might occur in these situations, how it impacts individuals and groups, and what it means in the larger concepts of conflict and peace building. And what they found out of this is that individuals and groups might all respond very differently to the same kind of conflict at hand, whether it's through cooperation, competition, some sort of response of selfishness or violence. They kind of focus on, this isn't all too surprising, but any opportunity that for competition is an opportunity for conflict. And conflict may be positive or negative. It just depends on the unique situation, how people respond to it, how it's viewed, how it's conceptualized, the people involved, and the resources and goals at hand. And so the authors kind of discuss this a little bit more as well, the unique situations and potential outcomes for each of the conflict categories that I mentioned in the methods section. And there's a review of each of those kind of in the full study there. And Natalie kind of made this as the key takeaway that understanding how competition drives conflict is critical, since this underlies many conflicts that occur in social situations. And so knowing your clients in these situations is helpful in figuring out how to resolve conflict at hand that best benefits everyone. And so again, generally straightforward about the relationship between conflict and competition. So what are your all thoughts on that?
Is it mean competitive environments like at the workplace? Is that where they're talking about competition?
I wondered that too. Like if you think of competition in more of a like negotiation sense, I think, at least that's what I think of.
What's the wait, do you have a link to the study?
Yeah, I'll share it to you all.
Or is this talking about just your conflict style in general? Like, how are you a competitor? Are you a collaborator, like that? I mean, and then they're just drawing the comparison between if you have that style of competitor, then it drives conflict, or I'm confused with like what the actual results of this study were, rather than just saying everyone kind of responds differently.
Right.
Let's see. So we show having a lot of preps in terms of taking that further be similar conflict between groups and highlight how individual behavior can.
Because any opportunity for competition is an opportunity for conflict. True, but it depends on the actor, right? Like who's involved, how they're going to.
Yeah, it looks like they were focused on more of the different perspectives. Like I'm looking at the abstract right now, and they're saying how they outline how conflicts can occur from three perspectives, considering conflicts between individual actors, between individuals in competing groups, and then considering conflicts between individuals within their groups. And so they say they show how individual level preferences determine actions taken in dilemma situations, in which outcomes are interdependent, leading to cooperative, selfish, or competitive behavior.
I mean, the whole conflict and competition in certain like psychological literature is essentially the same thing. You know, when groups are in competition with each other for particular resources, they're essentially in a conflict in some way, and it depends on like how they solve that conflict. as concepts, it seems like they're very, I mean, they're very, it makes a lot of sense that any opportunity for competition is opportunity for conflict. Of course, they could be the same thing, basically. What is a conflict? A conflict is two forces competing for a particular
Yeah,
resource.
like,
Right.
unaligned goals.
Yeah. And there's some level of competition. So, I mean, so if you're defining competition as like an actual competition, in other words, like two groups fighting over a resource rather than, two groups having done something to each other in the past and now they're trying to get through some level of resentment or something.
Yeah. I wish this was, I don't know if I have access to the full study here, but I wish it was a little more, because you're right, like the concepts in general, like it makes sense, but it would be nice to see a little more specific how they came to the conclusion.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that everybody responds differently to different types of conflicts or competitions. Oh, it's interesting because it's saying competition is one potential response to conflict as well, where it could also be cooperation, it could also be violence. So.
Right. Yeah, they looks like they focus on 3 different types of behavior, whether when they're in dilemma. So it looks like individual preferences, when they're in dilemma situations, when outcomes are interdependent, then these individuals can either move to a cooperative response, they can decide on a more selfish response, or can have competitive behavior. And maybe selfish and competitive are kind of combined in that. But I wonder if that's how they're making the difference there.
It's a theoretical paper, right? Or it's just like almost like an essay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I find it like a little too vague, like this actual research, and wondering, I mean, I guess like the results, the takeaways, yes, true. I trust it, but it just makes me, like the definitions. How is this person defining competition to say that competition is an opportunity? Yeah, I don't know. It all comes back to, I think, the uniqueness of the individual and how they respond to conflict.
Yeah. Right. I'm just looking at this. Hold on. Where's that? Oh, okay. Okay. So I'm just looking at the PDF here. It's actually, it's a submission. It's a part of what's called the Routledge Research Encyclopedia of Psychology in the Real World. So it's almost like a psychology, or it's an encyclopedia of psychology entry. So it's a very broad, I think, overview of like conflict and dyadic situations. Yeah.
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
Yeah. There's some interesting stuff in here. It's good sort of research review. Talking about coalitions.
Right.
But this is it's a long paper. It's a chapter of an encyclopedia. That's why.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's a good general overview, and that makes sense if it's an encyclopedia chapter. That kind of gives some context, I think, to the study.
Yeah, it's just a broad overview of conflict and competition and how they can lead to different outcomes. They could be productive, they could be destructive. So
yeah. All right. Do we feel good about this one? Do we want to go to the next?
Yeah.
All right.